The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, we welcome you to another session of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting the citizens of Minnesota. Now, here is your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening. Welcome to Your Legislators. Obviously, Barry Anderson not here tonight. I'm Jim Thoreen, and it's my honor and privilege to sit in his chair. Barry will rejoin you next week on Your Legislators. This is your program. We invite you to contact us by email, by telephone, and give your questions to us. We have 4 legislators, well experienced, up to date with what's happening in the Capitol as of today, and the issues of the day are tremendous. We've had some special votes today that came up, at least one. Anyway, we'll talk about that on the Senate side. But of course, there's always important votes. Every vote you cast has got some stake in some Minnesotan's life somehow. And it's important, serious business. Well, enough about that. Let's meet our legislators tonight. We have, to my left, one of the 2 senior members of our Minnesota legislature. A couple of weeks ago I was here and Phyllis Kahn was present. Tonight we have with us Representative Lyndon Carlson, and I understand, Representative, you have the same number of years as does Representative Kahn.
That's true. We were both elected in 1972. Representative Kahn and I joked, though, about who's the most senior member, and the first roll call is alphabetical, so C comes before K.
Okay.
But technically, we are sworn in at exactly the same time, so we have the same seniority.
And you represent a district is in the Twin Cities area, and you now specialize in what committee assignments?
Well, my district specifically is the cities of Crystal, New Hope, and Plymouth. Don't serve all of those cities in total, but parts of those 3, and that would be in the northwest suburbs. When you ask about my committee assignments, I currently the minority lead or the lead Democrat on the Ways and Means Committee. I serve on taxes and then state government finance.
A storied history. We'll hear some of that come out tonight, I'm sure. Also with us tonight from the Senate side, also near Twin Cities, Senator John Hoffman.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me back again.
Yes.
This is such a great honor to be here. And I represent Senate District 36, which is Olive Champlin, parts of Coon Rapids, and parts of Brooklyn Park, and share 2 counties, Anoka County in the north and Hennepin County on the south side of it, and serve on a number of committees, Health and Human Services and Housing Policy, Education, both the policy and the finance side. Then I serve on Elections Subcommittee, a Personnel Subcommittee, and then also Vice Chair of Energy and Environment. And you know, in 1972, I was 6 years old, so it's good to yeah. I sat back and I started listening, and I was like, oh my gosh, 1972, that's great. It's good to be in presence of some people that forget more in a day than I'll ever know when it comes to the public policy discussion. So thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Also from the Senate, Senator Gary Dames from Redwood Falls, and on the Republican side of the aisle, Senator Dames, your district and some of your committee assignments.
Well, thank you, John, and pleasure to be here tonight. My district is Senate District 16, which is southwest Minnesota. It's Brown County, Redwood County, Lyon County, Yellow Medicine, Lackawanna, and part of Renville County. Currently, I serve on the Education E12 Policy and Budget Committee. I serve on the State Departments and Veterans Committee, also on the Commerce Committee, and then I'm the ranking member on the Jobs, Agricultural, and Economic Development.
And how many terms?
This, I've just completing my 2nd term, so I've been here 6 years.
Very good. And finally, but not least, Representative Dean Erdahl, Republican from Central Minnesota. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty much. represent District 18A, which is Meeker County, and then 3 townships in McLeod, including half of the city of Hutchinson. I've got Highway 15 to the west, and then I have 1 township in Wright County, and that's Cokato and Cokato Township. So a district just to the west of the Twin Cities area. It's my 14th year in the legislature, 7 terms. So Lyndon had only been here 30 years when I was elected. And the committees that I serve on, education, innovation, I was a teacher at New London Spicer for 35 years. And I'm also on Ways and Means, the Capital Investment Committee, and I am the chair of the Legacy Committee.
Senators, I have a feeling that this could be an educational session. We have 2 teachers here tonight, and well-versed. And you might even have a book to plug, but I'll leave it at that.
I would never plug any of my books.
He's
But
actually,
Amazon.com.
What is the name of that book, Lyndon?
He was actually a teacher longer than I was. I was only a teacher 34 years, and he just said he was 35 years.
Had to come out ahead of him in something.
Well, we're not keeping score. I think this evening we had a significant vote in the Senate today, so maybe we'll start with the senators. The bonding bill was before your body today, and the results and maybe where are we headed. So perhaps Senator Hoffman, you want to lead, and then we'll have Senator Dames can follow up.
You know, it was a good discussion that happened, and the end of the discussion there was 41 votes for the bonding bill, which we need. You need 42 on a bonding bill in order to pass. And and I'm still scratching my head wondering what did happen today. I mean, that was the kind of the question that was in front of us, because when I looked at the proposal that was in front of us, it was pretty bipartisan and pretty much covered the whole state. And I even had to go back and look back to see just where some of those bonding projects were. And a couple of things to point, especially with interest rates are going to be the lowest you've ever seen in a while, and so now is the time to get good credit. And I would hope that this doesn't stop the process. And unfortunately, at the end of the day today, the process was stopped, and so the bonding bill doesn't move on in the Senate anymore. And so that's pretty much the piece of it. And again, I go back, there were some really important things. Rail safety, we had some the public safety piece in there, because we know, especially where I live, there's 1 million gallons of crude oil that travels through my community on a daily basis. And there's one particular area, Hanson Boulevard, which has been deemed as a pretty crucial area, and there was other places. I know Moorhead, Wilmer, Winona had some places too that have the same issues with the train traffic, especially when it comes to public safety. And to see that just all of a sudden disappear was kind of disheartening. I was very disappointed, to say the least, in that piece of it. And some really good ones. I am sad to see some of the RFA proposals that were in there. When you get the
RFA being
Rural Finance Authority, Rural Finance Authority. I'll look at Gary on this one. He knows more a bit about that, but I have some.
The Public Finance Authority, isn't it?
PFA, Public Finance
No,
Authority.
that's different.
That's a little different, yeah. And the Rural Finance Authority, it gives farmers the ability to get, especially when they're talking about their cash crops, to be able to get some low-interest money to get started. And there was, I think, $25 million in there that would have helped rural Minnesota. And I know some folks that, where I grew up, that's an important piece of what keeps them going. And to see that disappear, I think, is again, very disappointing for me.
All right, the report from your side of the aisle. Now we'll turn over to Senator Dames and your aspect on the bonding bill vote today.
Well, thank you, John. And I think there was disappointment on our side of the aisle, too. I think the disappointment is the governor introduced a bonding bill at $1.4 billion. The House is talking approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 million. And so we expected the Senate to come in reasonably around, probably the governors are a little bit less. We were kind of thinking maybe $1.2 billion. This bill comes out of the blue at $1.8 billion. And if we look at a lot of the things in the past, I mean, we've never done over $1 billion bonding bill. So to get to 1.8 just that quick was disappointment and somewhat of a surprise. But getting beyond that, when we start looking at some of the reality of it, when the February forecast was done, what we used in that forecast was $800 million. And that's what the forecast was done on. Now, what this does is the forecast then would be off immediately by about $11 million just this year for the cost on doing the bonding at another $1 billion. The finance, when we did the budget and finance last year, that was done considering we had a bonding bill of about $800 million. When you put another $1 billion on top of that, we're going to have tails of $85 million in the next biennium, which wasn't accounted for. So when we look at things like that, we've got to step back and take a look. Yes, interest is cheap, but it's just like a credit card. If you start overusing it, pretty soon you have issues. And so we felt that we offered an alternative bonding bill today that we felt was a very good compromise. It was $992 million. Of that, 700 was GO bonds, 150 was transportation funding. So we felt we had a very good compromise. So we were quite disappointed that our bill didn't receive any DFL votes. We felt it was a compromise, and afterwards, the statement is that if the Republicans want to do nothing session, they've got it off to a good start. Well, we have to back up and take a little bit of a look at that because, first of all, bonding bills technically originate at the House. So in this case, all at once we're going to try to originate one in the Senate and then send it back to the House on, I believe, and John could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Health and Human Services bill we were going to send it back over to the House. So this should not stop the process at all. This is the start of the process. We've made it very plain we're willing to compromise. We just want our DFL friends to do the same as we're doing. And to say that this is going to be the end of the bill, if that's the attitude we're going to have, that could be the end of the bill. But I would hope that we don't go there. I would hope that we compromise, get back to the table, and come up with a bill that everybody can work on and pass. And at the end of the day, I do think that'll happen. So,
if I may, Senator, you brought in the House side of this, and maybe we'll turn to our senior member of the House, one of the two senior members, to say, all right, procedurally now, given the vote in the Senate, what happens with the bonding bill?
Well, as was pointed out, bonding bills constitutionally must originate in the House. It raises an interesting question because my understanding was the Senate was using a House file. So that probably would be the argument, did it meet the constitutional muster or not? But while we're on the subject of bonding or capital investment, the House Ways and Means Committee, when they set the targets, set the target for a $600 million bonding bill, which in my opinion was far too low when you consider the infrastructure needs of the state of Minnesota. And they did that a year ago as well, came in with a very small number, and then they moved the number up until it finally reached the $800 million that was alluded to earlier. My problem with doing it that way was that it really prevented much input at the committee level to put that bonding bill together, and it was really done more top-down last time because of the lateness of the House putting together a bonding bill. And we seem to be on that track right now. There hasn't been, even at the $600 million level, a bonding bill put together by the Capital Investment Committee in the Minnesota House. But infrastructure needs are huge. Those bonding bills do create jobs. And the other thing was pointed out, the interest rates are very low right now. So I think the timing is very good with low interest rates and the huge infrastructure needs to move forward with a significant bonding bill.
Okay. Turn to Representative Erdahl, because the House, not in voting today on that bill particularly, but as it comes around the table here, where do we head next from your perspective, from your House caucus?
Well, I serve on the Capital Investment Committee. I don't know if either of you do. Lyndon doesn't this year, but he has in the past.
For about 30 years.
As with pretty much most every other committee he's served on at some point. But I've been on the Capital Investment Committee for quite a few terms and traveled the state with Representative Carlson looking at projects as we did this last year. And historically, we do a small bonding bill in the first year of the biennium, roughly. I mean, small is a relative term, but about $200 million. And historically, we do about an $800 million bonding bill in the second year of the biennium. And looking at a bill of 1.5 of GO bonds and $300 million in cash was, I think, too rich for the Senate Republicans' blood and a little too rich for ours as well. We have a bill, well, we have an amount set, a target amount of $600 million. And that's our starting point. I'm sure that now as we only have a couple of weeks left, so things are going to have to start moving. And I'm sure that we'll be, taking that figure and moving along. I would be surprised if we wind up at $600 million at the end here. I look at a bill, I agree, we have some major infrastructure needs in the state of Minnesota. I like PFA funding. That's the water, the infrastructure, the wastewater. Our cities in rural Minnesota have some tremendous needs with some very antiquated sewer systems, and I want to see robust funding for PFA. We probably will have some money for local roads and bridges. I think the HEPR needs of our MnSCU and university system need to be addressed. It's like if you got a roof in your house and it leaks, you fix it. And we own the roofs of the colleges and universities, and so they need to be taken care of. I am still optimistic. I speak with the Chair Torkelson, the chair of our Capital Investment Committee, regularly, and I'm optimistic that we're going to have a decent bill done at the end that we can pass.
All right.
It's one of the things I just want to come back on, and thanks, Representative Erdahl for bringing it up. And Senator Dames, when he talked about the amendment, and as I was looking through that amendment that was brought up, or the proposal from the Republicans today, and it was a good conversation. And when I mentioned RFA early on, even in the amendment, the RFA money wasn't there, and neither was the AURI money, which that's an organization that helps do the marketing. Because if you're going to have the crops and produce and whatever you're doing out in rural Minnesota, you just don't have the ability to market and brand it like you do if you were in a structured area where they have good marketing and branding going on. And so I was perplexed on that. And the other one that perplexed me too is when we look at our veterans and the deep need. We have some serious infrastructure problems. I know this because of sitting on Health and Human Services and seeing that, and then to realize that in the outer state of Minnesota, there were two really good bonding proposals for some infrastructure needs and capacity building for veterans services, housing, as well as that wraparound continuum services that are needed there, and that wasn't in there as well. And so I was just kind of, again, I'm perplexed as to what was the logic behind that, and I suppose that should all come out eventually. I mean, we're fresh off the floor, Gary, right? I mean, it's like
I'll certainly respond.
So historically, bonding bills are one of the last things that's done.
Yep.
And so we've got a couple of weeks. There's time to put together a proposal, and many times in the past, a bonding proposal is crashed and burned, only to be resurrected in some form again. So it's not time to give up yet. We've got some time. I think we'll come up with a bill that addresses some of these very important needs.
But I would say that's my point earlier is that if you're going to follow the legislative process and have the Capital Investment Committee put the bill together, then it has to go to Ways and Means, and then it has to go to a conference committee after it passes the House floor. And we're down to about 2 weeks, so our back is close to being up against the wall right now. The other thing I would make, or point that I would make about the capital investment bill, traditionally not all of the allocations in that bill are general obligation bonds. Some are revenue bonds or appropriation bonds, and are self-sustaining, like the Housing Finance Agency and so on, when they finance a home or an apartment building that would go through that, the Housing Finance Agency. Those dollars are paid back. And they're not paid back by the state of Minnesota. They're guaranteed by the state.
Senator Dames, a couple of closing moments
just
here on
like
bonding.
To respond on that, in that certainly, we can look at what's in both bills, but the reality of it is we built our bill around transportation and infrastructure. And so in the Senate bill, we had a $1.8 billion bill. A week ago, we had $563 million of new spending. And if we remember to look back at last year, we had $863 million was carried forward because we did not complete our Transportation Conference Committee bill, and we did not complete the tax bill. So we end up with a $900 million surplus this year, so actually 863 of that was carried forward. So we were expecting that to go for taxation reform for the middle income folks and also for roads and bridges. So we come up, the DFL introduces a $63 million new spending bill. And so we put an amendment on that bill asking for that to be moved to transportation, and it was a straight party line vote, pretty much, I believe, straight line by the DFL not to support the transportation infrastructure. So that's fine, but then I would have assumed you'd really have supported in your bonding bill, which you did not do. If you take a look at the new money you spent last week and take a look at the $1.8 billion you had this week, you're at about $2.4 billion, and you only spent 10% on transportation, in the transportation portion of it. And so when we look at that, it really sends a mixed message, so we can talk about what was and wasn't in our bill, but we also have to be very honest and fair what wasn't in your bill. And right now, I am hearing more about transportation than I am probably anything else. Yet, on your side of the aisle, you avoided that and went to 10% out of bonding and the total money that was spent last week.
Right.
So, I think we have to look at the whole picture, and if we want to start pointing fingers, we can certainly do that, but it's a different philosophy.
And then I'm not pointing fingers, Gary. I think I used the word perplexed. I was just perplexed, fresh off there. As you look at the transportation side of it as well, you're right, there was not a finished on the transportation side, and there's still a big debate out there regarding, and we had this last time I was on the show, on transportation. How do you pay for that transportation? Right. There's lots of theories out there about, getting into general fund. And others saying, no, that's not right. How else do you find some long-term sustainable funding? And to Representative Carlson's point, you got 2 weeks, so is that enough time, you think, Representative
I have a suspicion that something will spring loose. Let's put it that way. We are in spring. And
it's the first day, right?
I think there's time.
Good to hear.
The Transportation Conference Committee is meeting this weekend.
Yep.
I think there's no debate about the need and even the total amount.
Right.
We're talking $7 billion over 10 years.
Yep.
I think that's similar to what the Senate and House Democrats are also talking about. The question is how. Do we raise the gas tax? Do we raise the sales tax? Do we pay it for it with some bonding money? Do we pay for it with some of the surplus? How do we come up with the $7 billion? And the whole problem, I think, is right there. How do we do that?
That's the debate.
When we talk about transportation and bonding, something I'd like to point out is that there are limitations on what you can bond for in transportation. Mm-hmm. It can be only local roads and bridges, so you cannot bond for the trunk highways, state highway system. And traditionally, there has been some bonding dollars for transportation, but it's actually been relatively modest because you usually pass a transportation bill separate from the bonding bill. Mm-hmm. And the Senate has done that, the House has done that. They're far apart, and hopefully they will work something out over the weekend in terms of what the approach will be. But those are separate vehicles, as we would say in the House, that are funding transportation. And I have a feeling that in the end the bonding bill will carry more than the usual historical $50 million or so. It'll be a higher number this year because of the political dynamics. But I think we have to keep in mind for the viewing public that there are really two tracks when we talk about transportation. And so I wouldn't want to leave the public with the feeling that the bonding bill was the only vehicle, if you will, for transportation. there's the other vehicle as well.
Good disclaimer.
Yes, gentlemen, yes, it really, we're going to bond ourselves to some other topics. In fact, we've got a call, matter of fact, from Litchfield. Question comes in, college affordability, a big issue for students and recent graduates. With a $900 million surplus, why can't we continue the tuition freeze? So, gentlemen, 60-second toss-up. No, 30-pound toss-up. Oh, who wants it?
Well, I will just say that that's been a very strong position within the minority caucus on the House side,
right,
is to continue the tuition freeze. When we talk about higher education, however, we have to really talk about the House budget resolution, which virtually every single account in the House budget resolution was zero increase. So if you have a tuition freeze, both the MnSCU system and the University of Minnesota have indicated that they would need some appropriations to offset some of the costs that would be inherent in a freeze. But I feel very strongly that tuition has just gone up and up and up, and a freeze would be a reasonable way to approach it. And when I say that, in fact, I used to chair one education committee or another for about 20 years, and I carried the legislation years ago that put the formula in place that students would pay 1/3 of the cost of instruction and the state would cover 2/3. And what has happened now, because of the economic problems that the state had and a little different political philosophy at sometimes beginning in the 1990s and forward, is that state appropriations simply didn't catch up. So the people sitting around this table, when we were at a college or a university, we were probably paying about half in real dollars the tuition that today's students are. So when that caller calls in, they're touching on a very real issue. And you can't hardly pick up the newspaper and read an article about higher education without running across comments about the need to address student debt. And that's another component part of all of this. But I was very disappointed that for higher education in the House budget resolution that there was a zero increase.
One of your constituents, Representative Erdahl.
Okay, we have, in the last budget, we froze tuition through 2017. We lowered tuition for the two-year colleges. And the question now is, this is not a funding year. It's not a budget year. We do some money, but not much. We set the budgets last year, and we did that for higher education. The question now is, with that $900 million surplus, how should that be divided up? And at this point, I think the House Republican caucus is leaning toward doing some things in tax relief and also probably some things in transportation. If there are other decisions made on how to use it, it could be used for some of these other things. But at the present time, I think we're leaning on those two areas primarily. Now we'll see what happens as we go through. And if there are other decisions made, we'll see what happens, and it could affect tuition. I
hear that all the time, with college affordability, and there's kind of a multi-layered approach here. You have youth that are coming out of college that are up to their eyeballs in personal debt because of the cost of the college, whether it be, and I know some of the private colleges are at $45,000 a year now, I think, pretty much across the board on some of those. But the other thing is, they're coming out getting a job, that isn't able to really pay some of those student loans back at the rate that they should be paying it back. And now, just to be anecdotal, one of my constituents, his monthly payback is $1,200, but it was thanks to what happened federally, and there's 3 different ways that you can do it: on the needs-based, based upon, if you're going in to do some public service work, and there's the third one I can't remember off the top of my head. But those options, I think, are really viable to be sitting on the table to talk about, because you should make college affordability. You should be able to make it so that somebody has that level playing field when they graduate. And within our own state structure, you're right. And people really thanked us for what we did when we froze the MnSCU, and the University of Minnesota actually lowered the MnSCU side of it. And I know on the Senate side, it was $42 or $46 million is what we budgeted in through some of the higher ed pieces as well. So
let me just reiterate quickly.
Yeah.
Last year, on the budget year, we did freeze through 2017 with MnSCU.
Yep.
And next year, when we come back for another budget year,
Yep.
the possibility certainly is there to put more money into college tuition and extend the freeze or allow our colleges and universities to address it differently.
In the Senate bill, I think you alluded to, there's about $46 million targeted for higher education.
Yep.
And that's what I find very interesting. $46 million was targeted for higher education. Minskew felt they needed about $21 million to have an offset for the tuition freeze, yet
Yep.
there was hardly any dollars put in by the DFL Senate to help do that. And so I was surprised that there was hardly any dollars with a $46 million target. I was surprised that was kind of put off on the corner. There wasn't much done with that.
Do you
So-
serve on the higher ed,
No,
Gary?
I
No,
don't.
you and I are just on the education
Yes.
E12
Yep.
side of it. Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't hear that conversation, but yeah,
So-
that's
A bit
good.
of a
Yeah.
spin-off on the education issue. As you travel rural Minnesota, you know there are areas that are literally begging for workers, trained workers.
Yes.
And that's a common theme. So the education system, in many cases, geared toward a college education, a four-year education, but there are some marvelous Minskew systems schools that are teaching exactly the types of trade jobs that we need. So how does that come about to improve that or increase it or at least give more advantage to somebody to go into the trades as opposed to the four-year college?
And guys, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the folks that graduate from Minskew system, 82 to 86% of those folks stay within that area where they got their education. They stay in Minnesota.
that
And they
would be
stay
the
as that
VOTEC.
the VOTEC
Yes,
side of it.
right.
So
Correct
that's
that.
good. Thank you,
Yep.
Gary, for doing that. But that's an amazing investment that you're saying you're on that.
And I did, a couple of years ago, create a task force to work on a more seamless transition between our high schools and our vocational technical career education systems, and transferring the credits more easily, trying to address the needs that we have in the workforce, and trying to address, are we producing through our universities and our colleges and our technical schools the types of workers that are needed.
One
An
thing
interesting comment that I was going to make when we talked about the tech college is my wife is now retired, but she was a tech college administrator. And one of the things that was happening throughout the technical college system, which is part of Minskew, was the growth in the number of students who were enrolling that had a four-year liberal arts degree. And they found that they needed to have some technical background if they were going to be employed. And so that was a big growth area in the technical college system, especially at Hennepin Tech, where she happened to grow her work.
Comes to mind a Garrison Keillor joke, but I won't relay that tonight. Senator Dan.
Now you
One
can say
thing
it.
we have to do is we have to figure out a way to give the students when they're in high school some experience with the vocational programs that are available. It's really hard when you have a senior that's had no exposure to the vocational training in the jobs that we need to fill, when they've had no exposure to that, to decide that they want to go into a VOTEC program in welding, for instance. We need to give them some exposure when they're younger, when they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever. They need to get some exposure so that they start looking at that as a very, very successful trade that they can be in. Senator Weber and myself introduced a bill last year that would help the service co-ops work with their local school districts and put together form some groups that would be able to start doing that. We didn't get funding for that last year, but we did get some funding for that this year. And so they'll work with our local service co-op and work with the school district to put together some programs to where these students will have some exposure as freshmen and juniors and things like that to all of the various things that we have such a need for. I mean, it's nursing, it's plumbing, it's electrical, it's heating, it's welding. It's just the list goes on, and we need to get that so these folks get exposure so they'll.
And
go
you
to
see
these
a good
VOTEC
relationship. In the Anoka Hennepin School District, we set up the STEP program. That would have been set up.
I visited and talked with the superintendent there about that.
Absolutely, and you're seeing the youth that are going there are fast-tracking themselves out during their high school experience to get some of the vocational
Yeah.
training that they need, and it's nursing, it's welding, and it's plumbing and law enforcement. I mean, it's pretty amazing that that's a good program that's solid.
Our high schools used to have the shop programs, home economics at a higher level. A lot of schools still have it, but not like they used to. And as we have had a greater demand in sciences, mathematics, and reading, and these courses, as they have expanded, and the testing has become more rigorous for them. On the other side, some of these other courses have been reduced, and home economics and shop is a good example of that.
Without getting too heavily into the weeds, one of the things that happened with K-12 finance years ago, at the time you're talking about when we used to have more industrial arts education in the schools, they were lobbied by the School Board Association mainly to create what I'll call a unified budget. We used to have a separate line item for vocational education. And when that was folded in, and vocational classes are higher cost generally because you have equipment and supplies and so on. And so guess what? When the school districts were under financial stress, which programs get cut? It's the higher cost ones. And it kind of goes back to that unified budget. And I'm not going to fault the superintendents and school boards for that decision. Because it would have worked had we kept up the funding as we should have for K-12 education. When that didn't happen and you had the unified budget, then the big casualty was vocational.
All right, gentlemen, we do have more time for questions, and we urge you, if you are just a first-time viewer, give us the call or contact us by email. We'll relay your question on to our legislative panel tonight. A question comes in from Hampton, and the question is Minnesota going to comply with the Real ID bill? That's a federal legislation, of course, but we're not in compliance right now. Are we working on it?
Well, I can say we've had discussions on that in the House, particularly in our House Republican caucus, and I think that we are very committed to doing something. Now, there's two tracks to this, which way to go, and the discussion is right now, I think, fairly intense as to what should happen. I am confident that we are going to be doing something this year in the next week or so. Don't have much more time than that with Real ID.
So the question and the concern is being in compliance with the federal regulations. And you're working toward it, and you think it will be a done deal?
I think we'll get it done.
I'm hearing the same thing, and you want to be able to allow somebody to get on an airplane. A couple of things that pop up is, data privacy is an issue that floats out there, and then the cost. I know the cost is less. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago too. It's just to make sure that if you get somebody who's on a fixed income, how are you going to make sure that you haven't increased the cost, and so keep the cost factor down, and also assure that we're compliant.
The data privacy is a big issue.
Yep.
That is the big issue.
That
the
is.
data privacy. That is the big issue.
I would just say that, in my view, we need to get it done this session. And, there's some when the feds gave an extension for boarding aircraft that people thought, well, we can perhaps wait. We got a little breather room here. And that's really not true because it's already implemented to get on certain federal properties, military bases and so on. You have to have the Real ID to do that. And that was implemented, if I recall correctly, around January 1st of this year. And so I talked to a woman a month or so ago whose son is in the Marines that is coming back or was going to come back to North Carolina, and she wanted to go down and visit, and she asked me that very question, of what's needed. While we're on air, I would say that if it isn't passed right away, a passport does work. But for most people, they don't necessarily have a passport, and I think it's important to get that resolved. Part of the discussion is whether there's going to be one track or two tracks, whether people can opt out if they choose for privacy reasons not to get the Real ID, and then there's the other track where you would have the Real ID that would work for getting on military bases and other federal properties as well as aircraft. But I think sooner rather than later is.
I think we've got an extension like to 2018, but
that's for aircraft, yeah.
But I really expect we're going to get this done in the next couple of weeks.
I think we'll get it done, but we also have an expanded license that you can get right now that allows you to get on federal property and stuff. So it's not like there isn't an option already besides a passport. There is an option. It's just I think a lot of people don't know about it. But there is that option already. But I do think we'll get it done, and I think we need to get it done.
That option, if I may, to exercise that, I think there's only about a half dozen locations in the entire state where that can be done.
And it costs more.
And the paperwork and the cost is,
Yeah.
so it's very cumbersome is what basically.
But a general need, and I'm sensing and hearing that this likely will get cleared up in the next couple of weeks.
I was very pleased to hear my colleague on the other side of the aisle say that he thought it would be getting done, because I felt that it should be, and
I think it's a high
that was good news.
Yeah.
But we want to keep in mind that when the legislature voted on this last time, it was 200 to 1. So 200 people felt that we needed to put the brakes on it. So we just want to keep that in mind, too, that it had basically 100% support last time in 2009 when it was voted on not to comply.
So trivia, who was that one vote, Gary? Do you know?
There, no.
I don't.
And I wouldn't tell you if I did.
Right. Well, we have two civics teachers here. Maybe they're keeping track. I don't know.
I could guess, but I might be wrong.
I think at that point in time, a lot of states hadn't complied, and there was some thought that perhaps that wasn't realistically going to take place. That was 2005 when the feds passed the law.
Wow.
And the reality is it's down to just a handful of states now that haven't complied, and Minnesota, if we don't comply soon, is going to be a real outlier in the whole situation.
Gentlemen, we've got a question that comes to us from Duluth, I believe it is. The point being made that Minnesota, along with other states, undergoing a tremendous problem in opioid drug addiction. And so the question comes, what is the state doing, or can we be doing this year, if anything, to curtail the flow of drugs into the state or deal with the demand and treatment? So, broad topic, heavy topic, many media articles and television, radio items about this very topic. Where do we go? What can we do?
Well, one quick comment. When the reference is to the flow of those drugs into the state, the big problem is prescriptions and doctor shopping and so on for the opiate drugs. Mm-hmm. I think something needs to be done within the medical community, and I'm not sure exactly what at this point, but where the doctors start to monitor that more closely, the pharmacists monitor it more closely. We keep hearing where people will go pharmacy shopping, they'll go doctor shopping to get those drugs, and many people apparently are getting caught up in those drugs rather innocently because they're prescribed and they're very potent, and if the doctor prescribes too many pills, I'll put it that way, you can get addicted very quickly.
They're painkillers.
Yeah.
But we have,
when you've had surgery or something,
right,
and if they give you too many days supply, you're addicted, and then from there you try to get more. And
once again, in one of our House Republican caucus discussions this week, we did talk about the opioid problem, and we had two members who presented to us, and there are a couple of bills on the issue that I think are being fine-tuned as we go along.
And it's not just a metropolitan problem. I think rural Minnesota has been hit heavily in some neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. What we did in the Senate is we passed a bill out of the Senate just this last week that allowed the pharmacists to get more involved in taking back these drugs. And we feel that could help a lot to get a lot of them off the street, too. And that's another issue, not only like Representative Carlson said, but there's also an issue with getting those drugs that aren't being used back off the street and not being sold or moved illegally. So we felt that would be a good step forward.
It was.
But it's a huge issue, and it has to be resolved one way or another. And in part, I'm saying the medical community has got to be more sensitive.
And part of that, too, is, you're starting to share the medical information. Your data privacy piece argument comes up again, saying if I'm Dr. X and Dr. Y, if I choose right now, you find you fill out that HIPAA form every time you go to a doctor's office, and you can put in there, do not share this information. You still have that. So now you're starting to tap into a little discussion that might include some federal discussions and saying, okay, but we know the public piece is there, and that's why we did pass that bill, was to get folks within the pharmaceutical community, you know what, get these drugs turned in. Let's stop them before they get in.
Lots of moving parts to a societal problem
Yes.
in which the legislature will play a role at some point, dealing with either the violations of law and the sentences that go with it, or on the treatment side, or discovery of what's going on. Question for the panel from Morris. Why has nothing been done to increase the Minnesota monthly family program payment? The caller notes that it has been stagnant since 1986. Would that be the correct? Or
Yeah,
I
goes
turned
way
to you right
back.
away,
Yeah, no,
Representative Linden.
yeah, it goes way back. That's probably correct, into the 1980s. I was, off the top of my head, going to say in the early 90s, but the caller is probably correct. I think it needs to be adjusted.
I don't know what that dollar amount is.
It's $100 million. It's $100 million to fix. I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff we saw in Health and Human Services, about $100 million to raise it. Yeah, I think it was $100 a month or something. And I might have my
The actual
numbers back
monthly
there.
amount per individual, I don't have in my hand, but, it's made to be, I think, all right, we're going to get you by for a while.
Well, it's certainly something that should be looked at, but to answer the question why, I mean, we put last budget about over $11 billion into Health and Human Services, and it is the fastest growing part of our budget, and there are so many demands. Yes, there are demands in this area, but then we hear from all kinds of folks that have needs as well. So it is a big part of our budget. It's a fast-moving part of our budget in terms of going up, and there are a lot of demands.
Silver Tsunami's with us. I said that on the floor the other day, and Senator Dames is going to remind me of that as we looked at granny pods, and that's the piece. But you're right on it. It is the fastest growing just because of those needs, and that's where the general fund. So going back to the conversation on transportation, as you start dipping into that general fund piece, all of a sudden you start to compete against everything else that's in there, and that's going to be some long night discussions on that. So
As I recall,
yeah.
if we just stay at the same level right now, with the increased number of people coming on to MA on the senior side,
Yep.
we're pushing real close to an additional $1 billion per year.
And Senator, for the first time in the history,
A problem.
you're right on that. And the first time in the history of Minnesota, and our educators would know this as well, is we have more people retiring in the state of Minnesota than we do kids in the K-12 system. That's 850,000 kids in the K-12 system. And it's the first time in the history, so something needs to be really
When we say that it's
But it
the
is an issue.
fastest
Yeah.
growing part
Yeah.
of state government, I think it's maybe number 2 to corrections, but I'm not sure of that. But the point is, it's the demographic changes, as is being pointed out here. The baby boomers are now retiring as they begin to age. One of the fastest growing parts of the human services budget, when you look at it internally, is long-term care. And that's one area I think we have to look at to provide better services for home care, so people can have the appropriate support they need to remain in their own home. And not simply because it's lower cost, because I haven't talked to really any senior citizen that would say that if they had health care needs, their preference would be to stay in their home. And I think there's really a benefit both ways then. You can meet that concern and give people the opportunity to remain in their own home, but also there's some potential savings there as well.
And then with that, you have an issue too. When you get elderly waivered services programs, you still have a spend down provision that says you have to spend down to 75 and in some cases 80% of poverty in order to maintain your insurance premiums, and no other subcategory has to do that. They can still be at 133%. So all those issues are in Health and Human Services and need to be really fleshed out, because, like you're saying, it is growing, and it's growing because of the demographic change.
And it's the second biggest part of our budget. Education
Absolutely.
is number one.
Yep.
And if you keep these people in their homes, their mental health state is much better too. So I mean, in the long run, if we can keep these people in their homes, it's helps them a lot and helps us a lot.
Yep.
Well, my wife would say, Senator, that getting me out of the house keeps her sane. But that's a personal
That's
note.
why Lyndon's wife wants him to keep in the house.
We need a rim shot here. You got a drum
Yeah,
set.
that's right. We need a rim shot. You're right. You're right.
I was just going to comment, my mother, who's now passed away, but I still remember the conversation we had with her. We had her in-home hospice, and she was fortunate. She had 5 children. All of us lived in the Twin Cities, and her children and our spouses and a couple of nieces were able to help keep Grandma, as we called her, in her own home. And she told us clearly that was her desire. She said flat out one time when I was talking to her when she was quite ill, she said, Lyndon, she said, I know I'm going to pass away, but she said I would just like to curl up in my own bed. And we were fortunate because the whole family was here in the Twin Cities that we could do that. But when I say the desire of a senior citizen is to remain in their own home, not when they're facing her situation was facing imminent death, but to be able to live in their own home in the comfort of their own home is
So
really
many of
a
these
strong
issues
desire.
tie one to another. For example, that issue of somebody living in their home in the rural area, 7, 10, 12 miles out of town, they do need to get to the drugstore. And if they don't have family, is there a rural transit system that gets them into the drugstore? Now we're back to transportation. So you see it every day, balancing and how these issues cross over.
Yep.
From Sauk Rapids, we have just the suggestion that we talk about Sunday liquor sales. Are we moving anywhere? Is it changing? Anybody got an idea as to anything giving this year?
We voted it down in the House last year, and frankly, at this point, I don't know if it's coming up. Every now and then we hear from lobbyists or we hear from members that they'd like to see it come up again. But I can't say. I mean, we've got a tax bill, we've got a transportation bill, we have a bonding bill. We do have a lot of things that are still on our plate that need to get done. We need to be concentrating on those. And some of these other things that might be pretty important to some people may not get brought up this year because of the enormity of these other bills that we need to do.
And how short the session is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't
2 weeks
think, I don't see a liquor omnibus bill. Do you, Gary? I don't
No,
see that.
I'm on Commerce, and Senator Metzen decided not to have a liquor bill this year.
Yep.
And so I don't think we'll be seeing anything on it this year. I think that's.
So it's drive over to Wisconsin, right? Okay, I'm
Well,
kidding.
that's the issue.
I know.
Depends
In mind
on
is
what
some,
part
but,
of Minnesota
and
you
that
live
for
in.
some
Yeah, that's right.
cities it is, for others
But I mean,
it's
in
not.
terms of, some would argue that lost revenue, the ones that we hear a lot of, or a lot from, are the small dealers, the mom and pop operations on the other side of the issue that say that Sunday is the one day that they have off, and that if it were opened up to Sunday sales, then they would be compelled to open. But the flip side is that whole, especially with border communities and people going to other states. So that's the issue. That's the tug of war that's going on when that issue comes up.
I'm
But it's
sure
been
it'll
quiet.
be-
It's been quiet on the House side. I
I'm
think.
sure if we don't do it this year, it'll be coming back next year.
I would guess that it will probably.
Very likely.
We've got a few minutes left here. And as we do that, we were chatting before the program how Representative Carlson now, along with Representative Kahn, are the two longest-serving members of the House of Representatives in fact, the legislature. So I made the point earlier that as you
I think,
exit,
are you nearing the all-time record now?
We
You
broke the
said it.
all-time record last July
That's what I
13th.
thought.
so you're coming back for more, Representative. Is that what I hear?
Yes, I'm running for re-election. Yeah.
Okay,
So
good. Well, but
So
the-
if I'm fortunate enough to be reelected, that'll be years 45 and 46. So.
Okay. The remark I made was that with people leaving the legislature, whether it's 12 years, 15 years, 20 years, out goes some of the institutional information, knowledge, background. And I know that's very important. When you came in as a freshman, Representative Erdahl, I think you leaned upon a couple of senior people.
Yeah, I mean, I was a teacher.
Yep.
And so I taught government, I taught civics, which I think there should be more of, by the way. That's another topic. But you think you know how everything works when you get here because you taught this stuff, and quickly realize, no, that's not really how it works. And it takes a term or two to start to learn the ropes of, and to develop the relationships and the things that need to be done if you want to accomplish things.
Yeah, you're right. I for years watched Senator Leroy Stump when he was the education chair, and and he's got this institutional memory that just of knowing the history of education in Minnesota and everything else that he's been part of, and to see him, finally retiring. I mean, there's a moment of sadness because that person is no longer going to be there to really talk about what it's like to be the duck. And that's what he phrases. You look at this guy, he's so calm, cool, and collected when it comes to policy. And education, he puts these pieces together, and I saw for years, and even sitting with him on the committee, Gary, you agree with this. He just, and you see this articulate, calm, cool, collected guy, and he tells us years ago, he said, I'm kind of like the duck. I look calm, cool, and collected here, but under the water, my feet are beating a beat 60. And I am truly going to miss that person and miss who he's been as a mentor, as a leader. And he's done so many good things for the state of Minnesota. And it really, you kind of think, wow, and that's going to be gone.
So I had never heard the duck story, but I was his counterpart for several years in the House, and he seemed always calm, cool, and collected, but I didn't know he was pedaling so hard.
So we've got about a minute here. So quick prediction. Now we've got till sine die is how many days? Not many.
17, I think.
17 days. You're going to be working weekends, I take it. Is that what you project? Inevitably? Weekend work?
The last weekend.
Last weekend.
Well, again, it's not
Last
a budget
weekend.
year. A lot of those things that had to be done have been done.
Right.
A lot of the things that brought us the long weekends and all of this. I anticipate some long days and some hard work these next 2 weeks. But first of all, there's not going to be a special session. There's not going to be a government shutdown.
Right.
Those things aren't going to happen. But we'll get our work done, and that last weekend will be very busy.
On the weekend side, I would just point out, as you did earlier, for example, the Transportation Committee, which is one of the major outstanding issues, is working through this very weekend, if you're one of those 10 conferees. So,
Well, gentlemen, I'm getting the high sign. It's time to say thank you very much for your appearance here. We always enjoy having you here. Viewers, thank you for joining us on Your Legislators. Next week, Barry will be back. And please join us again, once again, as we listen to and learn from our legislators. Thank you.
There's much more about Your Legislators online at pioneer.org. Find out more about the history of the program, who has been a guest, and watch past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join in the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota Clean Waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.